like progress has been made, there may be some reason for optimism. But until, nothing's done until everything's done, as they say.
Huawei. This seems to be a big issue, and Secretary Wilbur Ross spoke on Bloomberg Television overnight and said that they are going to potentially give a pass to Huawei after previously restricting the company. How pivotal is that to negotiations?
Well, it depends. First of all, the two sides have tried to keep the two issues separate. They're somewhat connected, but they are separate because one's a matter of trade and one's a matter of national security.
Have both sides tried to keep them separate, or is that really true with China too?
Yeah, they get conflated more in the media than they do in the negotiating room. But the issue with Huawei is that the U.S. has a list of companies that, in theory, cannot do business with Huawei because what they would give them is against our best interests in terms of national security. A lot of companies have applied for exceptions to that. And what Wilbur Ross is saying is we're going to make decisions on who gets exceptions or not. So it may not be a complete pass for Huawei, but it may mean that they are able to buy things that we don't consider essential to national security. That remains to be seen.
Is there a narrative emerging about which of the two sides, if either, is making more concessions here to push the, this thing forward?
Probably depends on whose media you're listening to. The president would like you to believe, obviously, that the U.S. made a great deal. But when you look at what they're talking about, the idea that the Chinese would hold their currency stable, they've agreed to that for years and have been doing that basically for years, except for when they're making the yuan stronger, which is what the president would like to see. So there's not really a win there. The idea that the Chinese would buy more agriculture products, $20 billion worth next year. Well, if you extrapolate out from the growth rate of Chinese purchases of agricultural products up through 2017, the last year before the tariffs, we would have been at $27 billion. So maybe we're losing $7 billion in the deal. But the president will call it a win. The idea that the other issue is whether or not the U.S. Financial services firms get access to China. Well, China's already announced that they were going to allow that to happen. So I'm not sure that this is more than just dressing up a package that would have been in place anyway, and maybe we don't actually win anything out of it.
But there's phase 2 and phase 3 and phase 23.
And I've got a bridge, down there in Lower Manhattan, goes across to the lovely borough of Brooklyn that I can send you. Nobody really thinks those things are going to happen at this point. They're at least not any time in the near future, not before the election.
I'm surprised
put it that way.
Because honestly, a bunch of the reporting was saying that getting a phase 1 deal done was predicated on the idea of locking in some sort of framework for the second phase. Is that basically being abandoned because it's too difficult to come to that agreement?
Well, it's not being abandoned. They'll keep talking, but the idea of reaching an agreement that would cause the Chinese to significantly change their economic model is not going to happen in the next few months, especially when the Chinese have the possibility of a new president who might take a different attitude. So there's nobody in the trade business who thinks that there will be a phase 2 agreement before election day next year. Maybe we go into 2021 and we see either this president reelected or another president who keeps the pressure on, then maybe they will get somewhere, but probably not anytime soon.
So, Mike, just real quick, what do you think the odds are of getting this phase 1 deal done on the timetable people are talking about?
It does seem possible because both sides could use it. I mean, obviously, President Trump, facing an impeachment inquiry, would love to change the topic, love to change the story. And, of course, he'll proclaim this the greatest deal ever made. And this is a huge win, even if it's a loss. And he'll just tell people that and hope that they believe it, and maybe change the subject a little bit. The Chinese have seen their economy slow down a lot, and they could use some sanctions relief, particularly the December 15th sanctions on consumer products. If the president agrees to drop those, then that's a help for them.
Michael McKee, thank you so much for being with us. And actually, I didn't realize that China would like to keep Huawei separate in terms of from the trade versus the national security.
Yeah, it is a huge issue, obviously, for China and their national identity. It's such a big company for them.
Yeah, Michael McKee is our chief U.S. and global economics correspondent for Bloomberg Television and Bloomberg Radio. Thank you so much for being with us. We are seeing the rally ongoing in markets today, led by the big tech stocks that just can't stop going up. We're looking at right now the NASDAQ up 0.6%, the S&P 0.5%, Dow up similarly, reaching new record highs. Right now, let's head to our 99.1 studios in Washington, D.C. Nathan Hager there with world and national headlines. Nathan.
Lisa, President Trump has lost another round in his fight to keep his financial records under wraps. In a unanimous ruling, a 3-judge federal appeals panel in Manhattan has ruled the president cannot stop his accountants from turning over 8 years of tax returns and other records to Manhattan District Attorney Cyrus Vance. This ruling brings the case closer to a possible showdown in the Supreme Court. Vance is investigating whether the Trump Organization falsified its records to disguise hush payments during the 2016 campaign. Meantime, the president's facing a new legal challenge from a longtime magazine columnist who claimed he raped her in a recent book. The Wall Street Journal reports E. Jean Carroll has filed a defamation lawsuit against President Trump, claiming he lied when he denied attacking her in a Bergdorf Goodman dressing room in the 1990s. The Justice Department says the lead lawyer for the National Security Council is absolutely immune from being compelled to testify in the House impeachment investigation. John Eisenberg is defying a subpoena to give a closed-door deposition today. 3 other White House witnesses are expected to do the same. This week, the president campaigns in southern states he won by large margins in 2016, starting tonight in Kentucky. But a new set of polls shows the president continues to be competitive in 2020 battlegrounds. The New York Times Siena College survey shows Joe Biden with just a 2-point edge in 6 states that were key to the president's 2016 victory.
This is a positive, really, for the president, although I think it's important to note that these polls were conducted in mid-October, so prior to the House's vote last week, and obviously prior to whatever public segment of the impeachment inquiry goes forward or is still to come.
That's Bloomberg's Kathleen Hunter. Global news 24 hours a day on air and at TikTok, on Twitter, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. This is Bloomberg.
To see something far away, you can either get a powerful telescope or you can go there.
Talk about export numbers because they've been quite shocking. In Korea, we saw Singapore, Japan too.
Bloomberg Daybreak Asia.
How should investors be positioning?
When you take a look at the consumers in China, it remains challenging.
We go there.
To what extent is access to cheap credit part of the equation?
Tonight at 6 Eastern on Bloomberg Radio, the Bloomberg Business app, and BloombergRadio.com. Bloomberg, the world is listening.
Open calendar. What's my schedule looking like?
Next Thursday, you will be caught in an emergency flash flood between Park and First Street.
What? No, that doesn't work. I'm busy then. Decline. Decline.
Floods don't exactly work around your schedule. Disasters don't plan ahead. But you can. It starts with talking to your loved ones about making an emergency plan. So don't wait. Communicate. Get started today at ready.gov/plan. Brought to you by FEMA and the Ad Council.
Are you interested in a challenging and exciting career? One where you can be part of solving complex challenges across industries and geographies. Bloomberg's ever-expanding technology, data, news, and media services foster innovation, empower clients, and offer nearly limitless opportunities for career growth. Visit Bloomberg.com/careers today to view our current job opportunities. Bloomberg LP is an equal opportunity employer. The address once again is Bloomberg.com/careers.
Not completing high school is more of a social thing than it was an academic thing. Even though all these years have passed, I still had that longing to have my diploma.
At age 30, Carissa finished her high school diploma.
If you're even considering getting your high school diploma, you can do it.
No one gets a diploma alone. If you're thinking of finishing your high school diploma, you have help. Find free adult education classes near you at finishyourdiploma.org. That's finishyourdiploma.org. Brought to you by the Dollar General Literacy Foundation.
It's another Monday afternoon, yet another rainy day. So ditch the British winter and chase the sun across the globe with British Airways from London Gatwick and witness luscious scenery and calming waves. Fly from London Gatwick to St. Lucia with British Airways. with flights and 7 nights hotel from just £739 per person. Don't miss out. Book by November the 12th at ba.com/wintersun. With British Airways, incredible is within reach. Booking fees and conditions may apply. Limited availability. Selected flights in March.
Look at that. A riveting quest. A glorious opportunity. A scratch card. Yet he remains unfazed by the challenge, wavering at nothing.
Miss, please keep it down. We're in the quiet area.
Sorry. Here we are. The moment of truth as he reaches the end of...
Instant excitement with scratch cards from the National Lottery. Amazing starts here. Search Dream Big, Play Small. Rules and procedures apply. Players must be 16 or over.
Hiya. Oh, give me one of your chicken selects.
No.
Please, I've done my backing again.
You seemed totally fine when you walked.
And my boyfriend split up with me. Came home to find him with my sister.
Didn't know you had a sister. Is there anything I can do?
One of your chicken selects will cheer me up.
Tender chicken breast strips seasoned with a crispy coating. Chicken selects from McDonald's. Get your own.
Come on, please give me one.
Served after 10:30 a.m., except in selected restaurants, which will serve this from 11 a.m.
15-10-5, touchdown!
Tonight, TuneIn has your Monday night NFL football with the Dallas Cowboys at the New York Giants. Kickoff at 8:15 p.m. Eastern.
At the 5 on the hash mark, running into the end zone. It is a touchdown. He gets the high snap. He rolls out of the pocket. There's a short pass across the way. It's caught by Albert Wilson at the pylon. He goes into the end zone. Touchdown.
At home or on the go, hear the home and away call of every NFL game this season on TuneIn Premium.
ESPN Radio and TuneIn just go hand in hand. Hi, this is Mel Kiper Jr. reminding you that all of your favorite ESPN Radio shows and events are right here on TuneIn. Just search ESPN Radio to begin enjoying it today.
Want to know what's happening in right now? The latest headlines are just a tap away with Fox News Talk on TuneIn. When news breaks, get up-to-the-minute coverage on developing stories from around the world. Plus, hear all the Fox shows you watch on your TV. Listen to Fox News Talk around the clock on TuneIn.
Here's a swing and a drive deep to right field. Looking up. Goodbye, baseball.
Between game-winning shots and walk-off homers, follow TuneIn on social media to discover the latest and greatest in live sports.
With the 24th pick in the 2019 NFL Draft.
From live reminders that the biggest MLB games are on the air, to recommendations of the best new sports talk shows and podcasts.
He's going to be fine. He's going to be good right away in 3 years.
Follow at TuneIn on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram to get the most out of TuneIn.
You're listening to TuneIn, where you can hear all the audio you love in one place. Live NFL games, the hottest music, breaking news, and podcasts. Push play and go about your day, only on TuneIn.
The swagger of a perfect dunk. The rush of a three made from all the way downtown. The adrenaline surge of great defense. Can you feel the goosebumps yet? There's nothing like live NBA and nothing like listening live on TuneIn.
Giannis down the lane of the rim, throwing right corner three, another one.
TuneIn Premium brings you every minute of the NBA season, so you can be there when it matters most. Never miss the action as it happens. Hear the ball you love. Hear it live on TuneIn. Search NBA Today to start listening.
Headlines and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and at TikTok on Twitter. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
And I'm John Tucker in the Bloomberg Newsroom with this Bloomberg Business Flash on a day when the major averages are all higher, up about 0.5%. We did touch records since have paired their earlier gains this morning. The S&P 500 15 points higher at 3,081. The Dow up 147 points, right now at 27,494. The NASDAQ Composite Index is up 45 points at 8432. Credit a couple of things. Optimism on the trade front and also earnings. Commerce Secretary Wilbur Ross expressed optimism the U.S. is going to reach a Phase 1 trade deal with China sometime this month. And also, of the 362 companies that have reported earnings so far in the S&P 500, they had about 80%, that's about 286 reporting positive earnings surprises. Once again, the S&P 500 15 points higher. The 10-year yield up to 178 as we see the sell-off in bonds down 20-30 seconds for the benchmark. And also Brent crude right now, the international benchmark up 99 cents, 62.68 per oil. We check the markets for you every 15 minutes during the trading day right here on Bloomberg Radio. I'm John Tucker, and that is your Bloomberg Business Flash.
This is Bloomberg Markets with Lisa Abramowitz and Paul Sweeney on Bloomberg Radio.
We've talked a lot about McDonald's and how its shares are lower after the CEO got fired. But Under Armour shares plunging the most since July. At one point, falling as much as 17%. And this comes after the company disclosed that federal officials have been probing its accounting practices for more than 2 years. Poonam Goyal joining us now, senior analyst focused on the U.S. retailing market for Bloomberg Intelligence. Poonam, do we have any insight into what exactly Under Armour may have done wrong?
Well, all I know is that, they're under investigation about how they reported their sales inter-quarter. Whether that's true or not, we'll find out. But it was really the probe is on the fact that they were trying to inflate earnings between quarters.
So has there been, what's interesting here that this investigation has been going on for 2 years, yet it just kind of comes out now. Has there been any inkling in the past, or has there been any accounting issues in the past, or is this a real shock to the marketplace?
No, this is definitely a shock. For the last 2 years, we haven't heard of, such an investigation or really anything around this. So while sales have been more volatile over the past 2-3 years, this is a surprise.
What does it say going forward, considering it is backward looking? I mean, and I'm talking about what's the justification for how far the shares fell?
I mean, I'd kind of look at it as, yes, they're under an accounting probe, but let's look at the underlying health of the business, right? Let's look at Under Armour as a company and see what's happening there. And when you look at that, you kind of look at, it was once a company that was very well accepted by the consumer, that broadened its reach from apparel to footwear, accessories, connected fitness. And in the last few years, it's kind of lost its steam, where Nike and Adidas have really stepped up their game in product and marketing, and Under Armour's kind of fallen short with lots of inventory that's been being pushed through off-price, which they're now trying to pull back from. So it's about, what are they going to do with the product? I think that's how I'd look with it. Where do you see the innovation coming? And to date, if I was to look at it, I don't see them leaping in the direction where there is lots of innovation in the pipeline. I just don't see it there.
So the timing here is not great. I guess it's never great for an accounting issue, but the founder, Kevin Plank, I guess was already planning on, handing over the reins in January. So is there a little bit of a leadership vacuum here potentially?
For some time, Patrick Frisk will be taking over Kevin Plank's role, and I think we want to hear what his new strategy is. Is it the same? Is it different? How is he going to accelerate innovation, and how is he going to come to market without discounting? Because I think what you've seen is lots of discounting in the Under Armour brand, and it's also been brought into mass.
So one thing that I'm struggling with is just the leadership issues at this company, because not only are we getting the CEO stepping down, but they did not disclose this probe until the Wall Street Journal reported on it, which also is a little bit problematic considering the fact that if they really felt like they had done nothing wrong, why not get it out of the way earlier? How many people are asking about that?
On the call, no one really asked it in that manner, but I think they refuse to comment, but everyone is wondering, what exactly happened and why, and if there is something to be worried about. We'll know when time comes, but for now, our focus is really on what are they doing to accelerate the business.
So, Poonam, what are, kind of in the footwear business and the athletic apparel business, you talk about product and needing to maybe reinvent or reinvigor the product line. How is that done? Is that just one big product comes along and just shakes up the market, or is there a longer-term play there?
So product doesn't come out of nowhere. It comes from experience. It comes from having a pipeline of innovation and thought. So when you think about Under Armour, there's 3 categories that they compete in. They're doing very well in the connected fitness arena, where new devices are coming up and they're able to connect with the consumers that way. But when you think about apparel, and then when you think about footwear, in apparel, it's all about new fabrics, new innovation. So they really have to be playing with fabrics and have a pipeline like what Nike does. So, in some instances, Nike would have a product that they're thinking about that may not come to market for 10 years. So the pipeline could be that long. So where are we in Under Armour's pipeline is the big question. What's the newest technology that they are working on. So far, really the only thing I've heard is the hover technology, which is in footwear, which they're reinventing and they're pushing out to market. But even with that, I'm not impressed.
What about with respect to their supply chain and some of the tariffs? Do we have any sense of how they've been impacted there?
Yeah, so there may be some impact, but it's all built into their guidance. They talked about it on the call today, and there's really no additional headwind that we expect there, at least for the fourth quarter. As far as supply chain, I think them, along with everyone else, have really done a good job of just reducing lead times and really making their supply chains more efficient. We can see that in their gross margin gains. Their gross margins were up nicely in their quarter. They were up 220 basis points, and that was probably the reason for the 5-cent beat that they had this quarter, and it's continued to show that the gross margin will be the driver behind their earnings.
Poonam Goyal, thank you so much for joining us. Poonam Goyal is a senior retail analyst for Bloomberg Intelligence, joining us on the phone, talking about, it's interesting, Under Armour. I'm looking at the stock. Stock year to date is flat, but you look at Puma, up 59%, Adidas, up 57%, Nike, up 21%. So those athletic stocks have done really, really well, and it just shows you, even before today, how much Under Armour was lagging the market there.
Yeah, I mean, again, it raises questions about leadership. If they're getting a new CEO, and it comes at a time of accounting questions, it's going to just send the stock lower unless there is some major innovation, which Poonam didn't really seem to point to.
Yeah, and as Poonam was suggesting, it doesn't just happen overnight. These are things that take, as Poonam was mentioning, Nike could be investing in a product that could have a 10-year life before it gets to market. So again, the stock Under Armour down 14% today. For the year to date, it's essentially flat, trailing its peers. Accounting issues for a company, never good, but there's also a time of leadership change. This is Bloomberg.
This is a Bloomberg Market Minute. Stocks have records on trade hopes. Commerce Secretary Wilbur Ross expressed optimism the U.S. would reach a Phase 1 trade deal with China this month and said licenses would be coming very shortly for American companies to sell components to tech giant Huawei. A big transaction in the medical device industry. Stryker has agreed to buy the Dutch company Wright Medical Group. Including debt, the deal is valued at about $5.4 billion. The medical device and medical technology sectors have been consolidating. For Berkshire Hathaway, profits from its stake in Kraft Heinz were better late than never. Almost a third of the jump in Berkshire's third quarter earnings came from finally recording its share of the packaged food giant's 2019 results. Kraft Heinz delayed reporting first-half results on regulatory probes. And Indianapolis Motor Speedway and the IndyCar Series were sold to Penske Entertainment by the Holman family after 74 years. The sale is expected to close in early January. Courtney Donahoe, Bloomberg Radio.
The possibility of lung cancer can be pretty scary, especially if you're one of approximately 8 million current or former smokers at high risk. That's why SaveByTheScan.org wants you to know that now there's a breakthrough low-dose CT scan that can detect lung cancer early, and it only takes 60 seconds. You stop smoking, now start screening. For an easy quiz to see if you're eligible, visit SaveByTheScan.org. It could save your life. SaveByTheScan.org is brought to you by the American Lung Association's Lung Force Initiative and the Ad Council.
The market's in focus every business day. The P&L Podcast with Paul Sweeney and Lisa Abramowitz.
Are there some sectors that you want to have more or less exposure to?
What's behind this engine of gains?
Analysis of the day's Wall Street action.
The U.S. market looks relatively safe.
From Bloomberg Intelligence, Bloomberg Opinion, and influential newsmakers.
Ward McCarthy joins us right now.
P&L with Paul Sweeney and Lisa Abramowitz. Listen today on Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, or subscribe on Apple.
It's another Monday afternoon, yet another rainy day. So ditch the British winter and chase the sun across the globe with British Airways from London Gatwick to enjoy a warm Bayesian welcome.
How are you doing? Enjoying the sunshine?
Fly from London Gatwick to Barbados with British Airways, with flights and 7 nights hotel from just £699 per person. Don't miss out. Book by November the 12th at ba.com/wintersun. With British Airways, incredible is within reach. Booking fees and conditions may apply. Limited availability. Selected flights in March.
Hello? This is Dustin. I found something. Is anybody there?
We hear you, Dustin. With Sky Q, you can easily catch up on epic Netflix shows like Stranger Things and then watch award-winning Sky originals like Chernobyl. Get Sky and Netflix all in one place on Sky Q for one surprisingly low price, just £25 a month. Visit sky.com and join today. Offer ends November 14th. 18-month minimum term. As prices may change during contract. Requires Sky Q box connected to broadband. Set up from £20. Further terms apply.
15, 10, 5, touchdown!
Tonight, TuneIn has your Monday Night NFL football with the Dallas Cowboys at the New York Giants. Kickoff at 8:15 p.m. Eastern.
He's at the 5 on the hash mark, running into the end zone. It is a touchdown. He gets the high snap. He rolls out of the pocket. There's a short pass across the way. It's caught by Albert Wilson at the pylon. He goes into the end zone. Touchdown.
At home or on the go, hear the home and away call of every NFL game this season on TuneIn Premium.
The swagger of a perfect dunk. The rush of a three made from all the way downtown. The adrenaline surge of great defense. Can you feel the goosebumps yet? There's nothing like live NBA and nothing like listening live on TuneIn.
Giannis down the lane of the rim, throwing right corner three. Another one.
TuneIn Premium brings you every minute of the NBA season, so you can be there when it matters most. Never miss the action as it happens. Hear the ball you love. Hear it live on TuneIn. Search NBA today to start listening.
ESPN Radio and TuneIn just go hand in hand. Hi, this is Mel Kiper Jr. reminding you that all of your favorite ESPN Radio shows and events are right here on TuneIn. Just search ESPN Radio to begin enjoying it today.
This is not a commercial. This is a reminder. With TuneIn Premium, you could be listening to more music commercial-free. Get over 45 commercial-free music stations. Visit TuneIn.com/premium to upgrade. Like what you're listening to? Want to make getting back to it easier? Use the favorite button to keep track of the stations and podcasts you love on TuneIn. Just tap or click the heart icon to add it to your favorites. Then find all your go-to audio under the Favorites tab. Pretty easy, right?
Some days life can get in the way of catching up on the news that moves your world. TuneIn is here to help. With live 24/7 coverage from CNN wherever you go on the TuneIn app, you can always find a slice of your schedule, however long, to check in on the biggest stories of the day.
Hell hath no fury. The president's counselor went on a rampage on a taped phone call with Washington Examiner reporter.
Search CNN on TuneIn to get the live news when it matters most.
Broadcasting live from the Bloomberg Interactive Brokers Studio in New York. Bloomberg 1130 to Washington, D.C. Bloomberg 99.1 to Boston. Bloomberg 106.1 to San Francisco. Bloomberg 960 to the country. Sirius XM Channel 119. And around the globe, the Bloomberg Business app and BloombergRadio.com. This is Bloomberg Markets.
Coming up, we'll look at the outperformance of emerging markets and some of the manufacturing data that we're going to be getting this week that could potentially put those gains to a halt. Plus, we're going to be speaking with Patrick Palfrey, equity strategist at Credit Suisse. Right now, though, let's head over to our own John Tucker for a Bloomberg Business Flash. John?
Yeah, and Lisa hopes of a U.S.-China trade deal, the improving domestic economy, boosting risk appetite today. Technology stocks pushing Wall Street's three main indexes to records earlier since have pared back those earlier gains. S&P 500, 13 points higher. That's up 0.5%. We're at 3,080. The Dow Jones Industrial Average up 135 points. That's up 0.5%. We're at 27,484. And the Nasdaq Composite Index, 41 points higher. That's up 0.5% at 84 at 27. Washington and Beijing said they'd made progress in diffusing the trade war. U.S. officials also indicating a trade deal could be signed this month. And Dennis Gartman of the Gartman Letter says stocks are not cheap, but he says, you short this market at your peril right now.
It's getting egregiously, preposterously, comically overbought, but it can continue. The economic data, especially the employment numbers on Friday, were really quite good.
8 of the 11 major S&P 500 sectors are higher. The energy sector gaining, most oil prices rising. Tech shares, again, providing the biggest boost on the back of the rally of the trade-sensitive chip stocks. The Philadelphia Semiconductor Index touching a fresh record high. The index was last up about 1.4%. Right now, we have the 10-year yield at 178. That's higher as the price declines. And NYMEX crude of $1.16, 57.36 a barrel, a 2% rise. We check the markets for you every 15 minutes during the trading day right here on Bloomberg Radio. I'm John Tucker. That is your Bloomberg Business Flash.
This is Bloomberg Markets with Lisa Abramowitz and Paul Sweeney on Bloomberg Radio.
Well, I'm looking at the MSCI Emerging Markets Index, up about 12.6% this year, trailing the S&P 500. To get a sense of where we might be going forward as we look at all things emerging markets, we welcome Damien Sassauer, covers emerging markets for Bloomberg Intelligence, joins us here in our Bloomberg Interactive Broker Studio. So, Damien, as we've talked about before, emerging markets have been lagging. What's the catalyst to turn these things around in terms of performance?
Yeah, Paul, it's going to be manufacturing. I mean, we absolutely need to see the weakness in the manufacturing globally bottom for EM to really sustain the rally that we've seen. I mean, like you rightly point out, the MSCI EM Equity Index is at, its highest since the middle of July. And, the reason for that obviously is high tech and growth and all the, the Asian equities. But really for the rest of the index to really, sustain this rally, you're going to need to see the industrials. You're not going to need to see manufacturers really outperform here.
So far, let's just talk about that outperformance. If you look at, for example, the MSCI Emerging Markets Index, it's gained about 6% since the end of September. That compares to about 3% on the S&P 500. You see a similar outperformance on emerging markets debt over, for example, high yield debt in the United States, if not even more, especially when you account for the currency. And I just have to wonder whether the PMI data that we're going to be getting this week really could stymie that completely, or if this is just a currency-driven and macro-driven bet?
Well, we know the PMI data is backward-looking, but nevertheless, I think what you have to kind of think about, you're right, we do see 9 major emerging market economies from Brazil, Russia, India. They're all going to be announcing their PMI data today. But really, for us to really start to get confident that there is indeed a bottom put in, it's going to have to come from Asia. It's going to have to come from South Korea, Taiwan, the big exporters from China, et cetera. And on that front, the bullish narrative is set in stone. It's been 11, 12 months now since the trade war has been raging, and we're going to start to see some positive base effects come in, So, if the market sort of starts to hang its hat on that and saying, the deterioration in manufacturing isn't as bad as it was last month or the month before, well then, that's going to fuel the flames, and, you actually might see things rally from here.
Even if we get a trade light deal, a phase one deal, is that going to be material for the emerging markets, or are people going to just look past it and say, we still got a lot of bigger issues out there?
Well, I'm looking past it, Paul. I really don't see any way that we're going to, just at its roots, for us to go back to where we are before the trade war sort of started raging, I just don't know how we're going to get there. And, anybody who's kind of hanging their hat on the fact that a phase one is going to lead to a phase two or a phase three, and eventually we're going to pull all the punitive tariffs against China, I think that's far-fetched. I think that's irresponsible, quite frankly. So, for me, I just look at where sentiment is. And if you just look at, my goodness, risk reversals in dollar yuan, you just have this opportunity very inexpensively to protect against a big move in dollar upside if things go pear-shaped. And there is a risk they will, Yeah. Even Department of Commerce Chair, Wilbur Ross today was saying, he's cautiously optimistic, but, we're a long way from home here. So, I'd be taking what the market gives you. And, the fact of the matter is it's really inexpensive for a lot of the major currency crosses in EM to hedge against dollar upside.
I remember back in 2013, before the taper tantrum, it was an everything rally, and emerging markets rose in tandem. All of them, the index funds really fueled that. And I'm wondering whether we're seeing a similar type of rally, or if it's more discerning in that certain emerging markets are outperforming and others are severely underperforming if their fundamentals are deteriorating.
Well, Russ Kostrich at BlackRock made a really interesting point. When you have these collapsing rates in emerging markets, what it does is your discount factor, when you're kind of discounting future cash flows for equities forward, obviously it improves their enterprise value. It makes their stock look like it's worth more. And, my only thing is I don't think that's what the market's doing. I don't think the market is being, fundamental in its sense of saying, lower discount rates, okay, so the equity valuation should be higher. No, I think you're absolutely right. It's a, kind of glasses half full mentality where it's like, oh my goodness, we're going to get a trade deal in China, risk on, everything goes up all at once. I don't really think, we can sit here today and comfortably say, the current valuations for emerging market equities are cheap. Why? Because you still have all these liquidity issues and the plumbing of the global financial markets. And the reality is, EM equities should be cheap because they're trading at a haircut to developed market equities just because they're less liquid.
Just real quick here, we talked all morning about the Saudi Aramco deal and how the IPO is likely to happen. I'm just wondering, I know you focus on credit, but on the equity side, given the fact that the Saudi Arabian stock market is included in the EM indexes, Would that be a potential benefit in a risk-on market like this for the Saudi Aramco IPO?
Well, yeah. I mean, what you notice actually is that the MSCI Saudi Arabia index actually is off. One of the few losers, probably because people are selling their Saudi stocks to prepare for the fact that this Aramco deal is coming through, which it will, right? So they're going to need to make some room there. I think the real interesting thing on the equity front, and I'm not an equity guy, you rightly point out, is MSCI announced it has a semi-annual review coming up this week, and they're going to really make a discernation on the extent to which they add A shares, China A shares to that index.
Yes.
We all know China A shares. I mean, if we start seeing foreigners come into China A shares in droves, I mean, all bets are off because that's going to push things way, way higher. I mean, that's a big change, right? So, I think that can definitely give a little bit of boost to EM equities, and it probably is already. I mean, we've seen flows into EEM last week. I think they were the highest since February or something. So, there is a lot of reason to be glasses half full on EM equities, but on the debt side, verdict is still out.
Damian Sassower, Chief Emerging Markets Credit Strategist for Bloomberg Intelligence. Right now, let's head over to our 1991 studios in Washington, D.C. Nathan Hager with world and national headlines. Nathan.
Trying to keep track of the new legal hurdles for President Trump just today, Lisa, above and beyond the impeachment inquiry on Capitol Hill. Let's start in New York, where a federal appeals panel has ruled the president cannot block his accountants from turning over 8 years of tax and other business records to the Manhattan District Attorney's Office. Cyrus Vance's office is investigating whether the Trump organization falsified records to hide hush payments to two women during the 2016 campaign. President Trump's attorney Jay Sekulow tells Politico they'll take that case to the Supreme Court. Meantime, a magazine advice columnist who claimed the president raped her 2 decades ago is suing for defamation. E. Jean Carroll says President Trump damaged her reputation when he denied her claim that she detailed in a New York Magazine excerpt of a book she planned to publish last summer. As for the impeachment investigation, 4 Trump administration witnesses who were scheduled to give closed-door depositions today are expected to defy those subpoenas. They include John Eisenberg, the lead lawyer in the National Security Council. The Justice Department says he is absolutely immune from being compelled to testify due to his position in the White House. Over the weekend, the lawyer for the whistleblower who sparked the inquiry into the president offered to let Republicans ask written questions to protect the whistleblower's identity. But President Trump is rejecting that. His fellow Republicans are backing him up. Jim Jordan of House Oversight.
This is about overturning what 63 million Americans voted for just 3 years ago. And they're talking about doing it, obviously, less than a year before the next election.
Jordan's calling for the whistleblower to testify in an open session. Global news, 24 hours a day on air and at TikTok, on Twitter, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. This is Bloomberg.
Startups and research universities like New Jersey Institute of Technology are fueling the innovation economy. And few people are better positioned to see what's on the horizon in New Jersey than physicist and state representative Andrew Zwicker.
How technology is transforming our financial sector is revolutionary, and so much of that is in New Jersey. We are innovators when it comes to agriculture, and there is opportunity now for great transformation in how are we going to grow food in an ever-growing population, and how do we turn urban centers into agricultural centers. Autonomous vehicles is another one where we have some of the world's leading experts, and how this will transform how those who are either elderly or are visually impaired or mobilely impaired can start to use autonomous vehicles to transform their lives and have access to transportation they could have never had before.
NJIT, New Jersey Institute of Technology. Learn more at njit.edu/research.
Asset managers who seize change to launch new strategies, add distribution channels, or exploit new technology to re-engineer the investor experience are often rewarded. However, in an industry paralyzed with complexity, few act with agility or decisively. Few run their businesses strategically, yet the most competitive managers in the market know with the right partner and a flexible operating system, you can. Go boldly toward change with SEI Investment Manager Services.
Determination and operational strength are both essential factors for growth in asset management. I'm Steve Meyer, President and Head of SEI's Investment Manager Services Division. We know that disruptive forces create opportunities around the world. If you see potential in change, our industry specialists will maximize SEI's integrated platform of data and risk management, global investment operations, compliance support, and investor services to position your asset management business for success. Come grow with us.
With SEI Investment Manager Services, you lead the charge in a competitive marketplace. Learn more at SEIC.com/Cs.
It's another Monday afternoon, yet another cold day. So ditch the British winter and chase the sun across the globe with British Airways from London Gatwick to see spectacular coral reefs and white sand beaches. Fly from London Gatwick to Mauritius with British Airways, with flights and 7 nights hotel from just £949 per person. Don't miss out. Book by November the 12th at ba.com/wintersun. With British Airways, incredible is within reach. Booking fees and conditions may apply. Limited availability. Selected flights in March.
Now is the time for a little kindness. It's easy to feel overwhelmed these days, and everyone deserves a time out. Head to austria.info/kindness to tell us about someone who should win a holiday to Austria's beautiful ski slopes. With a pinch of luck, they'll be enjoying the snow, sun, and serenity of a winter paradise in no time. Woo! Visit austria.info/kindness now.
This is the sound of festive fun in London. You want to keep your savings for the things you love this Christmas, not a new boiler. We're with you. So our boilers come with 2 years interest-free credit to keep your savings for a Merry Christmas. You'll get a 5-year British Gas warranty, and now we can quote by video call evenings or weekends. Get a quote by the 30th of November and get £150 off a new boiler, or £450 off for existing home care customers. Search British Gas New Boiler. Conditions apply.
Hi, this is Brian Weber, host of NFL First and Goal every Sunday, kicking off at 1 Eastern only on TuneIn Premium. Be sure to listen this Sunday for the ultimate football fan experience, featuring 7 hours of commercial-free coverage of every scoring play around the NFL.
In the dictionary, a podcast is this: a digital audio file made available on the internet, typically as a series, of which new installments can be received by subscribers automatically. But on TuneIn, a podcast is this.
I'm Adam Grant, and this is Work Life, my podcast with Ted. I study how to make work not suck.
And it's defined like this.
Blackout is a suspense-filled thriller from Endeavor Audio and Q-Code.
From news, sports, to pop culture, comedy, and beyond. Define your own podcast possibilities on TuneIn.
Want to know a quick, easy way to see if your favorite podcasts have a new episode available? Just go to the home screen on your TuneIn app and see the latest editions under the Your New Episode section. Happy listening.
Good. Here's a swing and a drive deep to right field. Looking up. Goodbye, baseball.
Between game-winning shots and walk-off homers, follow TuneIn on social media to discover the latest and greatest in live sports.
With the 24th pick in the 2019 NFL Draft.
From live reminders that the biggest MLB games are on the air, to recommendations of the best new sports talk shows and podcasts.
He's going to be fine. He's going to be good right away in 3 years.
Follow at TuneIn on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram to get the most out of TuneIn.
Want to know what's happening in right now? The latest headlines are just a tap away with Fox News Talk on TuneIn. When news breaks, get up-to-the-minute coverage on developing stories from around the world. Plus, hear all the Fox shows you watch on your TV. Listen to Fox News Talk around the clock on TuneIn.
Far wing elevates. Triple bucket.
The roar of the crowd. The shot clock ticks down. Will the ball go in? The suspense is pure torture, but you wouldn't miss this for the world. And the replays just don't cut
the
it.
Sideline, the man fleet for 3.
TuneIn Premium brings you every minute of the NBA season streaming live, so you can be there when it matters most. Hear it now, hear it live on TuneIn.
Fake in the lane, turnaround jumper from 8 feet is good on
Search
the right.
NBA Today to start listening.
ESPN Radio and TuneIn just go hand in hand. Hi, this is Mel Kiper Jr. reminding you that all of your favorite ESPN Radio shows and events are right here on TuneIn. Just search ESPN Radio to begin enjoying it today.
And breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and at TikTok on Twitter. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
And I'm John Tucker in the Bloomberg Newsroom with this Bloomberg Business Flash. Investors trying to push up stocks for a 5th consecutive week, adding to the 18% gain this year already notched by the global gauge of stocks. Earnings continue to roll in around the world. We have the Uber, Marriott International, still due today. The Dow and the other major averages all jumping at the open today since peering back from records. Also, a report that the U.S. and China are closing in a potential trade deal, providing the latest impetus for equities. Now, as far as treasuries go, seeing a sell-off today. As for the 10-year yield right now, it's up to 178. The 10-year is down 30 seconds in price. S&P 500 right now, 12 points higher. That's up 0.4% at 3,079. The Dow Jones Industrial Average of 119 points. That's up 0.4% at 27,466. And the Nasdaq Composite Index 38 points higher. That's up about 0.5% at 84.25. And we check the markets for you every 15 minutes during the trading day right here on Bloomberg Radio. I'm John Tucker. That is your Bloomberg Business Flash.
You're listening to Bloomberg Markets with Lisa Abramowitz and Paul Sweeney on Bloomberg Radio.
Just want to bring you the latest on the McDonald's issue. Evidently, the global chief people officer, David Fairhurst, has resigned. Those headlines just crossing. We will bring you more on that as we get it. In the meantime, we are seeing a broad-based rally in U.S. equity markets, and here to talk with us about it, Patrick Palfrey. He is senior equity strategist at Credit Suisse. So, Patrick, I want to just get your sense on whether we're actually seeing fundamental strength in the earnings as we head into the final week of 3Q earnings season, or are we just seeing a very low bar that has been stepped over?
I mean, when we take a look at the third quarter earnings season, I think your point on a low bar that's been stepped over, I think that's a fair way of putting it. I mean, in reality, the backdrop is still anemic, and it's likely to be anemic in the fourth quarter. And when I say anemic, we're talking about EPS growth that is somewhere between 1% to 2%. So once you strip out the benefits of buybacks, earnings are essentially flat. Now, there's some unique dynamics that are going on, and when you take a look at the median company, trends will go a lot better, but nevertheless, it is an anemic backdrop for growth.
So, Patrick, on the flip side, sets up for maybe some decent growth numbers in 2020. Do you think the market's too optimistic about earnings growth in 2020?
Well, I think if you take a step back, I mean, analysts typically start out optimistic and estimates historically fall. So if you ask me, do those expectations need to come down? The answer is yes. Do I think we are going to see anything other than what we typically see? The answer is no. And when I say that, we expect EPS growth to come in around 5%. So that's a significant improvement from the numbers that we saw in the current quarter and the numbers that we're likely to see again in the fourth quarter.
What do you make of the volatility that we've seen in the response in shares to earnings beats and conversely to misses? The reaction has been more extreme this earnings season than it has been historically. How do you interpret that?
Well, I think investors have been looking for a way to get positive. And maybe let me take a step back here. Several months ago, we turned more cautious than we'd been in a while, and it was really around the deceleration in the industrial data and the fact that the yield curve was inverted. Over the past couple weeks, both of those appear to be dissipating. So we have a yield curve that is much healthier than we had historically, and the industrial data appears to be bottoming. So what we are seeing this earnings season is really a confirmation that the trends aren't that bad, and that's why we're seeing the positive response to results. More positive response to results than we typically see.
All right. So, Patrick, if I'm in the equity markets, am I just in the defensive stocks, utilities, REITs, consumer staples, or can I afford to maybe take some more risk with some cyclicals or even some growth stocks?
Well, we think now is the time to make that sort of pro-cyclical shift. So if you have been in the market, it's likely that you probably were in those more defensive sectors, and that has been the leadership really up until about the past 3 to 4 weeks. But and I had mentioned this earlier, with the beginning of the bottoming in the data and the fact that the yield curve is uninverted, we believe now is the time for investors to make that pro-cyclical shift in their portfolios and away from those more growth and defensive sectors.
I'm trying to understand what's changed for people to be trying to get positive. I mean, other than just a lot of negativity for a really long time and everyone's just kind of sick of it at this point. So what has changed?
So I think in reality, we're beginning to get through, I think, the most difficult part of the data. We haven't officially bottomed yet in the U.S. in terms of industrial activity. That's likely going to be around the end of the fourth quarter. So as we move into 2019, the pace of industrial activity is set to improve. And I think investors want to get ahead of that. And that's why I think that pro-cyclical move in terms of shifting portfolios is the right move. By the time you see that that balance in the data, it will likely be too late. So it's one of those environments where if it's there on the horizon and we start to see the green shoots that we are seeing, now's the time to get into it.
So, Patrick, part of the support for equity markets over the last certainly couple of weeks has been an expectation that some type of trade deal will get done, people calling it a phase one type of deal. But as we know, that can just turn on a dime or a tweet. What happens if, we don't get a trade deal and both sides say, let's kick it down the road till after the election?
I think if we get to a point in the discussion where the trade deal looks like it's getting further and further away from being reached, it will likely cause a spike in volatility, and we will likely see stocks sell off broadly. Now, what's interesting is over the past several months, those situations haven't been nearly as severe as what we were experiencing even 12 to 18 months ago. And I think part of the discussion is the deal is somewhere in the future. If it's not this meeting, it's next meeting. The shape and the size of the deal continues to shift. But I think we are getting more and more likely that something will be reached in some kind of form. And I think investors are taking comfort in that.
I'm wondering, when it comes to bonds, they are selling off in tandem with this risk-on feeling. At what point will they sell off too much, and will yields rise so much that it will provide sort of a negative headwind for stocks?
Well, historically, throughout this recovery, that threshold has been around 3.5% on the U.S. 10-year. So right now, what we are seeing is as interest rates rise, it's a signal that the backdrop for risk assets is improving. So I think we have a fair amount of distance to go before we have a headwind from, let's say, a valuation call or some other relative opportunity improvement. We still have a fair ways to go before we get there.
Any sectors, Patrick, you're just staying away from right here, given that you're getting a little bit more cyclical?
I mean, we want to continue to de-emphasize those defensive sectors, the REITs, the utilities, telecom, and also certain portions of staples. That's areas where you are not likely to participate in the rally that's likely going to happen here.
Patrick Pelfrey, thank you so much for joining us. Patrick is a U.S. equity strategist for Credit Suisse, giving a sense that the Credit Suisse is turning a little bit more, aggressive, a little bit more cyclical away from some of those defensive names, which have been such good performers this year, some of the best performers that we've seen.
Yeah, it seems like there generally is a desire to be optimistic right now, given the fact that we're not getting a lot of negative news anyway.
Yeah.
We do want to bring you some breaking news. The House Democrats have released the first impeachment hearing transcripts. This comes after the House Democrats did vote on this, and it was pretty much a vote that was straight down party lines, with Democrats voting for and Republicans voting against. This comes in the same day that President Trump lost an appeal against the district attorney of New York with respect to releasing his tax information. We'll be getting lots more on that Bloomberg balance of power coming up.
Yeah, coming up at David Weston. That'll be coming up in just moments. For Lisa Abramowitz, I'm Paul Sweeney. This is Bloomberg Markets.
In addition to Bloomberg Radio, you can catch the latest news and biggest newsmakers on Bloomberg Television. Look for us on DirecTV Channel 353 or check your local.
It's another Monday afternoon, yet another cold day. So ditch the British winter and chase the sun across the globe with British Airways from London Gatwick to enjoy a warm Bayesian welcome.
How are you doing? Enjoying the sunshine?
Fly from London Gatwick to Barbados with British Airways, with flights and 7 nights hotel from just £699 per person. Don't miss out. Book by November the 12th at ba.com/wintersun. With British Airways, incredible is within reach. Booking fees and conditions may apply. Limited availability. Selected flights in March.
Mate, this fan suspension is rubbish.
Tell me about it.
Even the radio's had it.
I know, but I'd get nothing if I scrapped it.
Actually, you can get at least £2,000 off a new Ford for it.
You're kidding?
With Ford's new for old scrappage scheme, you can get between £2,000 and £6,250 off a new Ford van if you scrap an eligible vehicle with us responsibly. Also, there's 0% APR representative on Ford Acquire. Ford Commercial Vehicles, backbone of Britain. Search Ford Scrappage. Exclusions apply. Contract and registered by 31st of December 2019 at participating dealers. Agent ownership criteria apply to scrappage vehicle. Subject to status. Free post full credit. Deposit restrictions apply.
Hi, this is Brian Weber, host of NFL First and Goal every Sunday, kicking off at 1 Eastern only on TuneIn Premium. Be sure to listen this Sunday for the ultimate football fan experience, featuring 7 hours of commercial-free coverage of every scoring play around the NFL.
This week on the New Yorker Radio Hour, I'll talk with presidential candidate Pete Buttigieg, whose star seems to be rising in the state of Iowa.
I've advanced past roughly 20 of my competitors, which is not bad for somebody nobody had heard of in January. There are, admittedly, a few more big hills to climb.
Listen to this episode of the New Yorker Radio Hour from WNYC Studios on TuneIn today.
Ah, finally another commercial, said no one ever. Visit TuneIn.com/premium to upgrade now and get over 45 commercial-free music stations.
24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, on the Bloomberg Business app, and at TikTok on Twitter. This is Bloomberg Radio.
From Bloomberg World Headquarters in New York to our TV and radio audiences worldwide, I'm David Weston. Welcome to Balance of Power, where the world of politics meets the world of business. On the brief today from Capitol Hill, Kevin Cirilli on another day of impeachment hearings behind closed doors, Jenny Leonard in Washington on hopes for a Phase 1 trade deal with China, and Greg Farrell on President Trump losing an appeal over his tax returns. So, Kevin, let's start with you. News breaking just as I took my seat here today. We have at least two transcripts out from the Schiff investigation.
Exactly. Just moments ago, David, a red headline crossing the Bloomberg terminal as the House Intelligence Committee releasing two transcripts from those closed-door hearings over the past couple of weeks regarding the impeachment inquiry. The first transcript is with the former U.S. ambassador to Ukraine, Marie Yovanovitch, and the former senior advisor to the Secretary of State, Michael McKinley. Now, in public statements, what Democrats are saying on the House Intelligence Committee is that this is only going to further their calls to continue with their impeachment inquiry. Just in a public statement led by House Intelligence Committee Chairman Adam Schiff, he says, quote, "As we move towards this new public phase of the impeachment inquiry, the American public will begin to see for themselves the evidence that the committees have collected." They go on to say in this public statement that the transcript of interviews with Ambassadors Yovanovitch and McKinley demonstrate clearly how President Trump approved the removal of a highly respected and effective diplomat based on public falsehoods and smears against against Ambassador Yovanovitch's character. So again, just moments ago, we're getting this transcript as these details begin to trickle out. And just anecdotally, I can tell you that there's been some problems logging on to see the transcript. Clearly, potentially, just an illustration of how much interest there is to read these.
Yeah, and presumably they're the first of several that are going to be coming out here, I suppose, as they go through and maybe redact because of national security issues. At the same time, they were supposed to have some more interviews, some depositions up there behind closed doors today and this week. Are those going forward because Ms. Yovanovitch, as well as Mr. McKinley, were actually willing to participate? Some people are not.
Exactly, and we don't know whether or not John Bolton, the former national security advisor, will go through with the testimony that was scheduled for this week behind closed doors. And we're hearing from sources on Capitol Hill that those public hearings could begin as early as the next couple of weeks, as Speaker Pelosi told you as well in that awesome interview.
Okay, thank you so much. Kevin Cirilli reporting from Capitol Hill. Now we're going to go to Jenny Leonard, who is in Washington as well. She's on trade, and we heard from Secretary of Commerce Wilbur Ross over last night that in fact things are going forward on Phase 1. What does that mean?
Yeah, David, the latest wrinkle that we've heard in the past couple hours is that Chinese officials are actually looking at locations in the U.S. that Xi Jinping, the Chinese president, would be willing to sign a deal for. That is significant because Chinese officials had initially hoped that any signing would be connected to a state visit and a real celebratory, visit by him in Washington. And Washington, as we know, has become really a city of China China hawks. So the fact that he's willing to come and sign it in another location, for example, Iowa, as the president has floated as one of the options, is significant here.
Yeah, so Mr. Ross actually talked to our colleague Haslina Amin and suggested really we probably are going forward with phase one. At the same time, he said phase two may require some legislation, he said, over in China. Is that really reducing our expectations of anything soon happening on phase two?
Well, if you look back to our reporting maybe a week or two ago, we heard from Chinese officials that they're very skeptical that anything might come after the first phase is concluded. And that's mainly because they really expect the president to roll back all of the existing tariffs, and that's on, $360 billion. And we've heard from the White House that that's really not on the table at this point. So anything that would go beyond agriculture purchases and maybe some commitments on intellectual property that the Chinese are going forward with anyway, regardless of this U.S.-China deal, would require a really big give on the U.S. side. And that's the big question here, if the president's willing to go there.
Okay, Jenny, thank you so much. That's our colleague Jenny Leonard reporting from Washington. And now I'm going to turn to Greg Farrell right here in New York, because we had an announcement this morning, actually, of the Court of Appeals coming out with a ruling on those subpoenas for tax records.
That's right. A victory for the Manhattan District Attorney Cy Vance. Somewhat predictable because the district court had also ruled in his favor. It does not mean that the president's going to have to turn over 8 years of tax records. It's quite likely now that it's been kicked back to the federal judge. It will go to the Supreme Court. So Trump is losing in these hearings, but he is succeeding in extending the time process.
Yeah, exactly right. And it's important exactly what's being sought here. They're not actually asking the president to do anything at all. They're going to his accountants and saying, please turn it over. And part of what the Court of Appeals, when a 3-0 ruling said is, wait a second, we're not asking the president to do anything. Yeah. It's a third party turning something over. That's a pretty narrow basis for the Supreme Court to take a different point of view.
Yes. And their argument was also the president has claimed that the disclosure or turning these over would be detrimental to him. And the appellate judges said, well, the last 6 presidents have actually voluntarily shared their own tax returns. So there's no reason to believe this claim that the president's making that this will harm him in some way.
Yeah, but as you say, the president's lawyer said, next up, the Supremes.
Yes,
so
absolutely.
the petitioning of the court. Okay, thanks so much to Greg Farrell reporting here in New York. And now let's get a check on how the markets are reacting to some of what's going on today. Joining us now is Abigail Doolittle. So I'm going to guess, trade maybe a little?
Trade is certainly a headline here. A big risk on day, record highs for the major averages. The Dow finally joining the S&P 500. We also have bonds lower. So again, a risk on tone. But relative to trade, I think that it has more to do with earnings, because the phase one, I think that's already baked in. Phase two, as you and Jenny Leonard were just talking about, that's more of a wild card. I think if a headline were to cross that those tariffs that are expected to be implemented on December 15th, if those were lifted, then if we saw a rally, I think you could squarely say that's trade. But I think that some of the trade news is mainly baked in at this point.
So what are the earnings that are driving it to the upside? Because we have some downsides, like McDonald's is down, Under Armour is down, I think, quite a bit.
Plunging.
So what's really pulling it up?
I think it's the overall tone that we've been talking about. Some investors, traders had been expecting some sort of a disastrous September quarter earnings season, and it hasn't turned out that way. In fact, we have a pretty solid earnings season. We have a recap of it, in fact, that shows that the bulk of the S&P 500 companies have, in fact, reported at this point. They have beaten both top and bottom line. Top not by a huge amount, but look at the sales growth there for on a year-over-year basis of about 3%. That's pretty impressive. So I think the fact that we haven't had any disasters, and it looks like there's signs that we could come out of an earnings recession, investors like that.
So it's better than was expected, as you say.
Definitely better than expected.
But we're well into it at this point. I think 70% of the companies, 90% by market cap.
Yes.
So we're going to be about to be through that. What do we need next to keep this going?
Maybe that December 15th tariff, if that were to be lifted, I think that could really be a driver, because that would be a macro tailwind that's, again, not baked in at this point, a bit of a wild card. But that could certainly stoke traders, in a significant way. But right now, the mood, the animal spirits are stoked, and it seems as though investors are all in.
Yeah, right up there at a record. Okay, thank you so much to Abigail. It's great to have you. Abigail Doolittle. We turn now to Mark Crumpton for Bloomberg First Word News.
David, Nigel Farage says his Brexit party will run candidates nationwide in the UK general election set for December 12th. This could take votes from Prime Minister Boris Johnson's Conservative Party. Conservative Cabinet Minister Jacob Rees-Mogg warned that Farage's position, quote, risks us losing Brexit altogether. The 5-week election campaign kicks off in earnest this week. Saudi Arabia is offering a number of incentives to make sure Aramco's IPO is a success. The kingdom cut taxes on the oil giant for a third time. It may boost dividends again. It also will reward investors for holding on to shares longer. Shares will be listed on the Riyadh exchange. Aramco reported 9-month profit fell 18%. Sales were hurt by lower oil prices. Iran says it has doubled the number of advanced centrifuges it operates, increasing its capacity to enrich uranium. The country continues to back away from commitments under its nuclear deal with world powers in an effort to counter American sanctions. The U.S. withdrew from the agreement in May of 2018. McDonald's has fired CEO Steve Easterbrook for having a consensual relationship with an employee. The relationship violated the burger chain's policy. Easterbrook had revived sales at McDonald's with all-day breakfast. He'll be replaced by the company's head of U.S. operations, Chris Kamczynski. Meanwhile, the head of people operations at McDonald's, David Fairhurst, has just resigned as well. Global news 24 hours a day, on air and at TikTok, on Twitter, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in over 120 countries. I'm Mark Crumpton. This is Bloomberg. David?
Thanks so much, Mark. Coming up, Commerce Secretary Ross says we're close to signing a Phase 1 trade deal with China. We asked Myron Brilliant from the Chamber of Commerce just how close we really are. That's coming up next. This is Balance of Power on Bloomberg Television and Radio.
You're nuts.
It's another Monday afternoon, yet another cold day. So ditch the British winter and chase the sun across the globe with British Airways from London Gatwick and witness luscious scenery and calming waves. Fly from London Gatwick to St. Lucia with British Airways, with flights and 7 nights hotel from just £739 per person. Don't miss out. Book by November the 12th at ba.com/wintersun. With British Airways, incredible is within reach. Booking fees and conditions may apply. Limited availability. Selected flights in March.
It's never nice missing out. But millions are doing just that by having a current account that doesn't pay them any interest on their hard-earned money. TSB is here to help. They offer interest to all their Plus account customers for no monthly fee. So if you're one of the millions of people who are missing out, talk to TSB. Terms and conditions apply.
The S in Audi S-Line stands for many things like sporty, stylish, streamlined, and now seductively priced. Like the new Audi A4 S-Line, which you can now have from £359 per month, £2,154 initial rental. Test drive one at your local Audi centre, but you'll have to be swift. The offer ends soon. Search Audi S-Line. Audi, Vorsprung durch Technik. With 48-month contract hire, 10,000 miles per annum, 18s and over, subject to status. Damage charges may apply. No ownership. Ordered by 31st of December 2019 from participating centres. Audi Financial Services. Visit audi.co.uk.
Hi, this is Brian Weber, host of NFL First and Goal every Sunday, kicking off at 1 Eastern only on TuneIn Premium. Be sure to listen this Sunday for the ultimate football fan experience, featuring 7 hours of commercial-free coverage of every scoring play around the NFL.
ESPN Radio and TuneIn just go hand in hand. Hi, this is Mel Kiper Jr. reminding you that all of your favorite ESPN Radio shows and events are right here on TuneIn. Just search ESPN Radio to begin enjoying it today.
Want to know what's happening in right now? The latest headlines are just a tap away with Fox News Talk on TuneIn. When news breaks, get up-to-the-minute coverage on developing stories from around the world. Plus, hear all the Fox shows you watch on your TV. Listen to Fox News Talk around the clock on TuneIn.
Here's a swing and a drive deep to right field. Looking up. Goodbye, baseball.
Between game-winning shots and walk-off homers, follow TuneIn on social media to discover the latest and greatest in live sports.
With the 24th pick in the 2019 NFL Draft.
From live reminders that the biggest MLB games are on the air, to recommendations of the best new sports talk shows and podcasts.
He's going to be fine. He's going to be good right away in 3 years.
Follow at TuneIn on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram to get the most out of TuneIn.
Next time you look up at the stars, think about this. Inside you are
the remains of a stellar explosion. You are made of stardust. And without the stars, there wouldn't be us.
I'm Guy Raz, the wonders of the universe and the people who still look up every night. Next time on the TED Radio Hour from NPR. You can subscribe to the TED Radio Hour on TuneIn.
This is not a commercial. This is a reminder. With TuneIn Premium, you could be listening to more music commercial-free. Get over 45 commercial-free music stations. Visit TuneIn.com/premium to upgrade.
The swagger of a perfect dunk. The rush of a three made from all the way downtown. The adrenaline surge of great defense. Can you feel the goosebumps yet? There's nothing like live NBA and nothing like listening live on TuneIn.
Giannis down the lane to the rim, throwing down. Right corner three, another one.
TuneIn Premium brings you every minute of the NBA season, so you can be there when it matters most. Never miss the action as it happens. Hear the ball you love. Hear it live on TuneIn. Search NBA today to start listening.
You're listening to TuneIn, where you can hear all the audio you love in one place. Live NFL games, the hottest music, breaking news, and podcasts. Push play and go about your day, only on TuneIn.
Enforcing, but also dealing with trade secrets and technology transfer. We don't know yet what's going to be in that IP chapter, and we do not yet know what the administration is willing to do on tariff relief.
So let's sort that out just a little bit. You're saying that you think the Chinese are maybe insisting on it. Maybe the United States is willing to do some rollback of the September 1 tariffs, not just holding off on the December 15.
Well, David, I saw the Vice Premier Leo He before he saw President Trump during the negotiation period just 10 days ago. Clearly on the minds of the Chinese is some kind of rollback on tariffs. We, of course, want to see that because we think it would help our economy, help our farmers, help our manufacturers to get rid of some of these tariffs. On the same side of the coin, though, we need to expect more on the IP front, dealing with tech transfers, dealing with trade secrets. This is a big area of concern for U.S. companies, big concern of the administration. I'm encouraged that clearly the Chinese are looking at a site for discussions with the president. That means that they're getting closer, but we hope that something can get done this month.
Do you expect something really substantial on intellectual property in this phase 1? Because we've heard from the Chinese they have to change their legislation. There's all kinds of things they have to do. It's just too hard to get done.
I think they're going to make some improvements that we welcome, but not go as far as we want them to go. The bottom line is there's some other big issues like cross-data flows. How do we deal with data, which is so fundamental to companies today, not just in the tech and financial sectors, but in many other sectors. How are they going to deal with subsidy practices at the state and local provincial level? There's a lot that has to be done in a second phase, so this is a start. This is a movement in the right direction. This is a trade truce that we're talking about. But ultimately, we need a bigger deal, and I hope we get there. Now the question is when and how, but that's going to be dependent on first getting this first phase 1 agreement done.
We're talking with Myron Brilliant of the United States Chamber of Commerce. Let's turn now to the USMCA, that successor to NAFTA. As you know, it's terribly important to U.S. business to a lot of people. We talked with Nancy Pelosi, the Speaker of the House, on Friday, who said that she is hopeful she can get it done. At the same time, she absolutely has to have some concessions on enforcement, and she needs her caucus behind her. This is what she said.
It's about having agreement on the trade agreement. It all springs from what is in the trade agreement. I have gone in the past to the floor with a minority of my members, but that's not what this is. This is about a policy that we are establishing that isn't, again, let's just to pass it, we'll pass something less than has true enforcement in it.
So, Myron, I asked that question, thinking if she really wants USMCA, she might say, as long as I get a majority of the House, I don't need a majority of my caucus. She's saying no way. She wants what she wants on enforcement.
David, I have to think that we can get this deal done, not because the business community wants it. I think the politics are aligning. The Speaker and the Democrats need a win. They need to take something back to their congressional districts. The administration clearly has made this a top legislative priority. I think the winds are coming together to get something done. There are some loose issues to be resolved. They're closer than they've ever been. Speaker has acknowledged this. Chairman Neal has acknowledged it. They're working on some outstanding issues around labor and enforceability. They're working around some other issues. But I think the two sides could get a deal done within a week or 10 days, which would set forward an implementation of a bill that would lead to a vote down the road. And we want to get it done before the end of the year. That's the bottom line.
Well, exactly. As a practical matter, they don't have that much time because there aren't that many legislative days left in the calendar given the holidays and things. Absolutely. And then you're into an election year and you've got primaries and caucuses and things like that. So do they have to get it done this year?
David, I think we have to work on the premise that they can get it done this year. I think the political will is there. There's end game jockeying going on. I think the Speaker, Pelosi, has been very forward-looking, has worked closely with the administration, particularly Ambassador Lighthizer, who's had close consultations with Chairman Neal and the Working Party. I think they're close to a deal. There are some loose ends that have to get resolved around labor issues and enforceability. These are things that can get worked out. If the will is there, which I think it is, we'll get something done this year. I'm confident of that. And we're doing our work. I mean, we have fly-ins going on. We're doing TV ads in key states like Michigan. We're going to keep working this issue hard. And I think labor has a motivation, too. They've got a better deal if they get this USMCA passed because they're going to have labor and environmental issues addressed in it. They should be part of the discussion as well in terms of getting this across for a final vote.
We're talking with Myron Brilliant of the United States Chamber of Commerce. Lastly, let's turn to Brexit because there are some issues about U.S.-UK trade agreements. We've heard that they're going to be a great trade agreement. President Trump now has said, he said recently that in fact he doubts that if they go forward with the deal that they have on the table for Brexit. This is what he said to the UK media.
Under certain aspects of the deal, you can't do it. You can't do it. You can't trade. Well, I mean, we can't make a trade deal with the UK, and we can be, because I think we can do many times the numbers that we're doing right now.
So, Myron, are your members of the United States Chamber of Commerce concerned about this issue, that with the Brexit there may not be a trade deal with the UK? Because there's a lot of trade going back and forth between the UK and the US.
David, what unites China, USMCA, and Brexit is uncertainty. And what do our members want? They want certainty. They want certainty in the China negotiations. They want certainty in getting USMCA done. And they want certainty on getting a Brexit done. I think we have said very clearly we support a U.S.-UK deal, which could address areas like services and digital trade. But that's got to come after the Brexit negotiations complete and also after the United Kingdom and Europe reach their understanding on what is next on the trade front. So there's a lot of work to be done. I think we could get it done. We run the U.S.-UK Business Council. We're going to be advocates, but it's not going to be a short-term thing. This is going to take some time, and we're going to be lining up in support of it.
Myron, you make such a powerful point about certainty for U.S. business. We see it in things like capital investment, for example. CEOs pull back in capital investments when they don't know what the rules are going to be. Do you have any sense that the administration, starting with Donald Trump, the president, understands the importance of certainty? Because I would have to say, whatever you think about the first 3 years of President Trump's administration, there hasn't been a lot of certainty.
Well, look, the Patriots lost last night. Those who were betting on the New England Patriots didn't get certainty last night. There hasn't been certainty, and it's hurt us. I mean, I know consumer confidence remains pretty good. Unemployment is low. But business is not investing in the way it would be investing if we had more certainty on the trade front. So, again, we've got to get something done on China. I'm encouraged that we're going to probably get a Phase 1 agreement soon. We've got to get something done on the USMCA. I think this year is ripe for getting a vote. And third, we've got to see clarity in Europe. We can't have fragmentation in Europe. We've got to have clear rules of the game.
And are the incentives shifting for President Trump? Because we are now 364 days away from an election. Does some of that certainty in election year maybe help him as a practical matter in his election?
Well, I think if I'm the President of the United States, and I don't pretend to speak for him, I would want certainty. I would want to bring some stability into the economy. I think we have good, decent numbers. We could have better numbers if we put these trade challenges behind us. We don't control what happens in London and in Brussels, but we do have some say in what happens in the U.S.-China relationship and, of course, what happens with USMCA. So let's see the politics align on USMCA. I think we can get there. Let's get a vote done this year, and let's hope that something positive and forward-looking on the U.S.-China front gets done. But even if an agreement is reached in the next 2 weeks, we still have work to do on a Phase 2 agreement. We can't let either side off the hook because there are big issues still. Right. Cross-border data flows, subsidies, industrial policies. None of those are going to be really addressed in the Phase 1 agreement.
Myron, great to have you here. As always, that's Myron Brilliant. He's head of international affairs and executive vice president of the United States Chamber of Commerce. Still ahead, Under Armour is in the crosshairs today as the stock has fallen on news of possible accounting irregularities. It's our stock of the hour, next on Bloomberg Balance of Power, on Bloomberg Television and on radio.
Why has J.D. Power ranked Commonwealth Financial Network #1 in independent advisor satisfaction among financial investment firms for the 6th straight time? We think it comes down to one thing: you. Because it's your input and feedback that keeps us focused on what's most important to you and your clients and continually pushes us to be the best we can be. Maybe that's why we receive top marks in every category of the J.D. Power 2019 Advisor Satisfaction Survey. They named us #1 in client support, #1 in firm leadership, #1 in operational support, #1 in compensation, #1 in professional development support, and #1 in technology support. Ready to partner with the best? Call Commonwealth at 866-462-3638 or visit commonwealth.com and feel the power. Member FINRA SIPC, a registered investment advisor. For 2019 J.D. Power award information, visit jdpower.com/awards.
Imagine being fired because of who you love. Imagine being denied medical treatment because of who you marry. Imagine being evicted because of who you are. Millions of Americans don't have to imagine this. They have to live it. Because in 31 states, it's legal to discriminate against LGBT people. Get the facts at beyondido.org. Brought to you by the Gill Foundation and the Ad Council.
To understand the latest developments in tech, business, and finance, talk to the best.
Tell me about the collaborations.
It also helps to be the best.
What are the real ethical dilemmas here?
Carol Masser.
Is there a data share at all that goes on between these companies?
Jason Kelly.
How do you go about getting inside a story like this?
Bloomberg Business Week. Weekday afternoons at 2 Eastern on Bloomberg Radio, the Bloomberg Business app, and BloombergRadio.com. Bloomberg, the world is listening.
This is Balance of Power on Bloomberg Television and Radio. I'm David Weston. It's time now for the stock of the hour. Under Armour is heading for its worst day in 2 years, plunging 17% after the company disclosed that federal officials have been probing its accounting practices. Kaylee Lyons is here with more. It's never good news when the feds are looking at your accounting.
It's never good news, and today it's enough to completely wipe out this stock's gains for the year. So this started over the weekend, the Wall Street Journal reporting that the feds were looking into the accounting practices. So the company then had to come out and say, yes, this is true, and it's been happening for 2 years. They first responded to document requests back in July 2017. The company says it's fully complying with the DOJ and SEC. It says it didn't do anything wrong, but essentially the focus of the probe is whether it inflated sales from quarter to quarter. So obviously that's not something you like to hear as an investor. The street pretty much fully admitting today this is going to create an overhang on the shares, at least for the near term, although the one exception, an analyst over at Stifel said to take today's plunge actually as a buying opportunity, because at the end of the day, this isn't something that's going to affect investors directly. He says that the drop today is not about the fundamentals of the company. It's just that immediate fear on the disclosure of that probe.
Well, that is the question. What are the fundamentals of the company? And are we confident we know what they are if they're not accounting properly?
Well, yeah, good question. And I will say that the company didn't address any further this probe on the call. They made one mention of it, and then that was it. Now, as far as the fundamentals, the bottom line is still looking pretty good. They actually beat for the 6th quarter in a row. Revenue did fall slightly, but even though it fell, it did beat estimates. The only thing that is continuing to plague the company is that North America, their main market, domestic market, makes up about 70% of their business, is still just really sluggish. They're struggling to turn that around. And keep in mind, that story, along with this accounting probe, comes just about 2 months before they're going to have a CEO change. Kevin Plank is handing over the reins to the company's president in January, and this creates a lot of overhang on the stock going into that transition.
Yeah, it's a tough time for the incoming CEO.
It is. This is a very difficult time for all of this to be coming to light, and you're seeing that reflected in the share price today.
Okay, Kaylee, thank you so much. Great reporting on Under Armour. That's Bloomberg's Kaylee Lyons. Up next, he famously said he wanted the House Oversight Committee to hold 7 investigative hearings a week for 40 weeks. But that was back when Barack Obama was president. How does former Congressman Darrell Issa feel about the House investigation of President Trump? We're going to ask him next. This is Balance of Power on Bloomberg Television and on radio.
This is a Bloomberg Market Minute. U.S. stocks are posting record gains on U.S.-China trade optimism. The Dow is up 100 points to 27,447. S&P 500 up 12 points. The Nasdaq climbing 39. But shares of Under Armour are plunging. The athletic apparel maker disclosed that federal officials have been investigating its accounting practices for more than 2 years. McDonald's has fired CEO Steve Easterbrook because he had a consensual relationship with an employee. He'll get a severance package consisting of $675,000 and 18 months of health insurance benefits. And the U.S. Navy has awarded General Dynamics a multi-billion-dollar contract to build attack submarines. Donna Wilson, Bloomberg Radio.
The lifeblood of tech startups isn't just money. It's executive and technical skills, the kind of skills that companies need to build real products, and the skills that venture capitalist Chris Sugden of Edison Partners sees in the graduates that are coming out of New Jersey Institute of Technology.
The amazing thing about NJIT is their graduates, they have multiple offers on average, not just one. They're coming out with real skill sets that are immediately hireable and available to them. I think we see an understanding by the faculty and administration at NJIT that we've got to train and educate the whole student, not just their, one side of their brain. And I do think that's sort of part of the DNA today. There's practical and there's sort of academia, and merging those two together and understanding that if we're going to have our young people go get great jobs and have great successful careers, they've got to have both sides of their brain activated. And I think we see that with NJIT.
NJIT, New Jersey Institute of Technology. Learn more at njit.edu.
Sweet strawberry icing. You're in Goodwill, and just past that vintage denim jacket you spot miniature donut earrings. You lean in. Ah, that's the scent of shopping success. Because at Goodwill, every item you buy funds local job training and more. So bring home those donut earrings and bring home so much good to your community. Goodwill. Bring good home. Brought to you by Goodwill and the Ad Council.
You don't usually find the titans of finance, business, and politics sitting around together.
There's been this transfer of royal power and royal prerogative.
But amazingly, they're nearly all here every weekday.
Let's talk about their data. What are you looking for?
Bloomberg Surveillance with Tom Keene and Jonathan Farrow.
So where does the circuit breaker come from?
Weekday mornings at 7 Eastern.
He's got to respond, doesn't he?
On Bloomberg Radio, the Bloomberg Business app, and BloombergRadio.com. Bloomberg, the world is listening.
From New York, this is Balance of Power on Bloomberg Television and on radio. I'm David Weston. For Bloomberg First Word News, we go now to Mark Crumpton.
David, House committees released the first 2 transcripts from closed-door depositions in impeachment hearings. Interviews with former U.S. Ambassador to Ukraine, Marie Yovanovitch, and former senior advisor to the Secretary of State, Michael McKinley, are now available to the public. Today, the committees are scheduled to hear testimony from 4 Trump administration witnesses. According to 2 people familiar with the matter, all 4 don't plan to appear. Meanwhile, President Trump suffered another setback in his effort to guard his financial information. A federal appeals court refused to block a subpoena for his tax records. That subpoena was issued by the Manhattan District Attorney. The ruling moves the Trump tax case one step closer to a showdown in the U.S. Supreme Court. Commerce Secretary Wilbur Ross says this month the U.S. may not need to put tariffs on European cars. He told Bloomberg the U.S. had good conversations with European car makers. This about their investment plans. Last month, the U.S. struck a deal with Japan. It averted the auto tariffs. The manufacturing slump in the Eurozone hasn't gotten any better. Last month, it remained near the weakest in 7 years. Factory jobs were cut at the fastest pace since the start of 2013. Employment fell the most in Germany. Global news 24 hours a day on air and at TikTok on Twitter, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in over 120 countries. I'm Mark Crumpton. This is Bloomberg. David?
Thanks so much, Mark. Darrell Issa went from founding a successful business to serving 9 terms in Congress representing districts in and around San Diego. After stepping down in 2018, he's back in the race for Congress in 2020. And we welcome him now from San Diego. Mr. Congressman, thank you so much for joining us.
Well, thank you, David.
Let me start with why. I mean, you stepped down just a reasonably short time ago. As I understand, you're running for a somewhat different district this time. Why are you back in the race?
Well, I'm lucky. About a third of this district was mine until redistricting a few years ago. But I feel a little bit like Howard Schultz when he left Starbucks. You put a lot of years into Congress, and you step away, and suddenly everything goes to, in a handbasket. So that's part of it. The other part of it is I was looking forward to serving in the administration, but I was blocked by one senator, Senator Bob Menendez, refused to give me a hearing, and as a result, I never got confirmed into a trade position that I really thought I could have helped the administration with.
Your last race, the primary, was fairly tight before you stepped down. Are you expecting an easier time of it this time? Because as I understand, the demographics are a little bit different in the other district.
Well, they're non-existent comparatively. The last district I won by a small amount. Well, President Trump or Hillary Clinton got about an 8-point lead. So about 8 out of every 100 people voted for this conservative, having voted for Hillary Clinton. In this case, this is a Trump plus 15 district, so very different dynamics, even though it's only a few miles apart.
So most of us really remember you because of that government oversight committee that you ran for several years. And you were, I think it's fair to say, fairly energetic in your investigation of President Trump and President Obama and the people in the Democratic administration. How do you feel about what Adam Schiff is doing right now?
Well, I came into Congress with Adam Schiff 19 years ago, and you might remember that the way he got to Congress is he beat Jim Rogan, complaining about Jim Rogan helping lead the impeachment of Bill Clinton. So there's more than a little irony that he thought when he was running 19 years ago that the impeachment of Bill Clinton was wrong, and now he thinks that anything they impeach this president for will be okay. So I'm a little disappointed because obviously there's no high crime or misdemeanor, but they're looking for one. And that's not the way impeachment's supposed to work. You're supposed to find the crime and then impeach the president. Adam and I are aware of the only impeachments that have ever happened, only removal of office, I should say, of any official under impeachment have been federal judges who wouldn't resign after their crimes. So it is a tool that shouldn't be used lightly, and unfortunately I think it's being weaponized for political purposes.
Congressman, you said it's obvious that there was no high crime and misdemeanor. Would you just explain that for a minute? I mean, apart from whether ultimately you think it's impeachable, isn't there at least an arguable case that if in fact the President of the United States went to a leader of a foreign country and said, please help me investigate one of my political opponents, is there at least a colorable case there that might be abuse of power?
You have to look at it in the proper perspective. Asking for anyone and everyone not to be above the law is appropriate. Now, the fact that Hunter Biden was above the law when Joe Biden basically got his case dismissed without an investigation is an abuse of power. Saying you want to have it looked into to see, and working with the Department of Justice to see whether there was a crime, it may be politically a little insensitive sounding, but the reality is you want to stop corruption. If Hunter Biden was guilty of foreign corruption under the Foreign Corruption Policy Act, the fact is he should be held accountable. If he committed crimes there or crimes that would be illegal in the U.S., he should be held accountable. And that should be true of anyone. So as we go around the world trying to teach a government system that tries to avoid corruption and then punishes those who inevitably do try to profit in a corrupt way with kickbacks or bribes or any of the other things that happen in most countries, we need to be vigilant. Should it have been the president saying to his cabinet people, look, I want to fight corruption everywhere, including Ukraine where it's obvious? Sure. But did he do anything wrong by saying that you wanted to have him work with the Attorney General's office to see if there was a crime committed? Not at all. That's well within his rights. He is the chief law enforcement officer of the country. You might think it was politically questionable, and David, just to give your viewers history, the first impeachment was of Andrew Johnson because he fired, they didn't like him, and he fired the Secretary of War, and they impeached and almost removed him. He absolutely had a right to fire the Secretary of War,
but they treated it politically as an impeachable offense. So is it impeachable? Right. Anything's impeachable. Right. Did he commit a crime? Not at all.
Okay, we're talking with former Congressman and now candidate Darrell Issa out in San Diego. So, Congressman, I understand what you're saying. The president, if he wants to go after corruption, that doesn't sound like a bad thing. It would be nice if he did it generally rather than specifically. But why, if this was such a noble thing, did he need to threaten holding back on military aid that had been ordered by Congress, not just authorized, but ordered by Congress? Why did he need to threaten President Zelensky rather than just saying, you know what, there may be corruption, could you help me, please?
Well, first of all, members of the Senate, including Joe Biden, have historically withheld funds until they get what they want. It happens all the time. As a matter of fact, I've been in senators' offices trying to get them to release holds they have on various funds for various allies, whether it's Lebanon, Egypt, or a myriad of others that we support over the years. So that's not uncommon. But having said that, if you read the transcript, it wasn't a threat. If you look at the timeline, he wasn't even aware of any funds being held, and the funds were not, in fact, held past when they were asked for. So the facts in the case don't support the narrative that Adam Schiff is trying to put out. And I think that's an important thing is, you know, people are going to hear that the president is going to be on trial. Mm-hmm. But quite frankly, Adam Schiff, Nancy Pelosi, AOC, they're going to be on trial with the American people of, are they in fact being just in what they're doing, or did this begin with Adam Schiff reading something that didn't happen in order to create a national narrative that was false? And the answer is the latter.
Once again, we're talking with former Congressman Darrell Issa out in San Diego. So finally, sort of to wrap this up, if we could, Congressman,
sure.
Why are they trying to put the whistleblower on trial? That's the one I don't understand. Because whatever the whistleblower's motives were, whatever his background was, actually what he pointed to did happen. We now have the transcript, and we know that. So why do we go back to that? Now, are you concerned about that as a former investigator, about what that could do as a chilling effect on future whistleblowers?
Well, first of all, whistleblowers to the federal government are not always anonymous. As a matter of fact, it is expected that a whistleblower comes forward. Often the whistleblower has been part of doing something wrong, and the whistleblower is given immunity in return for being publicly available. So the idea that a whistleblower is the same as a confidential source, maybe to the press, is very different. Just a week over the weekend, there was a 46-page expose on a company called Tyversa in the New Yorker. That work was the result of our committee and a whistleblower working for years to uncover a cyber fraud that was being committed against the government. That's one of the many, many hearings that we had over the years. The whistleblower was treated badly. In the case of Fast and Furious, the whistleblowers had to be protected by Congress for years from the Obama administration. So the idea that whistleblowers are secret and they're not that you can't cross-examine them is definitely not a tradition that I would support. I do support the fact that they should not be punished and there should be no damage to their careers as a result of their going forward, and I would join with anyone on that.
Okay, Congressman, I really appreciate you being with us today. It was very helpful. That's Congressman Darrell Issa, former Republican congressman from California, who is now running again for Congress. This is Balance of Power on Bloomberg Television and on radio.
Dear Calvary Hospital, my mom Irene and dad Benjamin sacrificed everything for me. They were life givers in the truest sense of the word. Mom volunteered in the pediatric trauma unit at a major city hospital for 30 years. It was only natural that in their final days, just 6 months apart, Calvary Hospital was there to care for them as they do for so many families. Their cancer pain was relieved, as was our emotional pain. The compassion and care was unparalleled. The calmness and immaculate setting, peaceful and serene. At their end of life, they received a spirit of living that I will remember forever. Sincerely, Lorraine Braun.
This is Frank Calamari, president of Calvary Hospital. To learn more about our unique Calvary care, call us at 718-518-2000. Calvary Hospital is where life continues.
markets, headlines, and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and TikTok on Twitter. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
Yeah, I'm John Tucker in the Bloomberg Newsroom with this Bloomberg Business Flash on a day when it is risk on. Now, stocks are off the best levels of the day. Earlier in the day, the Dow climbed to claim its first all-time high since July. S&P 500 and NASDAQ also hit new highs, but have pared those gains. A report that the U.S. and China are closing in on some sort of partial trade deal that's providing the latest impetus for stocks after the Federal Reserve cut interest rates last week. 10-year Treasury yield rising to 1.78%, down 19/30 seconds in price. McDonald's fell after firing its CEO. Under Armour sinking after disclosing an accounting probe. S&P 500 up 10 points at 3,077. The Dow is 87 points higher, 27,435. And the NASDAQ Composite Index is up 38 points right now at 84.24. I'm John Tucker, and that is your Bloomberg Business Flash.
This is Balance of Power on Bloomberg Television and Radio. I'm David Weston. Less than a year to go until the election, and though we have a ways to go before we know who the Democratic candidate is, it's not too early to start thinking about the backdrop for the election and to consider what history teaches. Here to do just that for us is Kaylee Lines.
David, of course, in recent history, we know the stock market has performed pretty well under President Trump. But when you look at its performance in the past 3 years since the 2016 election relative to the performance after 2012 and 2008, the returns really have been about the same after President Trump's election and after both elections of President Obama. That's the stock market performance. And when we take a look at the economics as well, we know President Trump once said he would be the greatest jobs creator of all time. And to some extent, in certain sectors, that is true. You've seen gains across sectors, most notably in agriculture, where the workforce has risen 9.8%, though you have seen some slight declines in the services and sales and office sectors of less than 1%. And of course, David, it's not just jobs or the economy that really matter going into the 2020 election. It also is the impeachment inquiry. And if we look at predicted odds, we see that the odds of the president getting impeached in his first term have now risen to 78%, while the odds of him not completing his first term are now, the odds of him completing his first term are much lower now, around 71%. And of course, what does that mean for 2020, David? Well, maybe the odds are just a little bit higher that a Democrat is going to take the White House in 2020. Predicted now puts the odds of a Democrat winning at 55%, of a Republican winning just 48%, David.
Okay, thanks so much. Terrific reporting from Kaylee Lines. That's the backdrop to the 2020 election, but what Democratic policies might speak to the voters? On Friday, I asked House Speaker Nancy Pelosi whether Democrats could persuade Trump voters to switch despite a strong economy. This is what she said.
While you make some indications that the economy may be improving, and God willing it is, in the lives of American workers, they still feel a stagnation of their wages, a stagnation of their opportunity.
Welcome now our political panel of Jen Kearns. She's founder of Women for a Great America, and Jeannie Zaino of Iona College and senior advisor to applied economics. Always great to have the two of you here together. So what about that, Jen? I'll turn to you first as a Republican. Does she have a point that, okay, fine, overall the top line numbers are good, but if you go below the top lines, there are a lot of people who are not feeling it?
I think that was the one glaring error of her interview that I saw. I think Americans are feeling it. We saw last week the wages numbers coming along quite nicely, unemployment numbers coming along quite nicely. President Trump was able to add 128,000 jobs to the economy versus the 85,000 expected, 85,000 that were predicted. And look, that was despite an auto worker strike, a trade war with China, and an impeachment inquiry. So the guy's not doing badly. And look, when it comes to the American people, I do believe that they're feeling their wages have come up, their situation in life is better. And I thought the most laughable point she made was that Americans want less expensive health care. Well, she ought to check out Elizabeth Warren's price tab for Medicare for All and socialized medicine, because that is not cheap.
Well, I'm going to come back to Medicare for All because it is something she did talk about. But Jeannie, what about Jen's point? Because the fact is, it's not just the top line number. If you look at real wages, they have been growing, and in fact, if anything, disproportionately on lower income workers. So is it true that, in fact, people are feeling better?
There is a certain segment. You can't deny that the economy has been growing. But I think what Nancy Pelosi was talking about, and it was a great interview, by the way, that you did with her on Friday, what she was talking about was the fact that it still is not getting down to Main Street. And you can look just, for example, at what this president has done with the tariff war and the impact it's had on his constituents, the farmers, in the Midwest where he needs them most, right? So you could go down the list to people who are not feeling this good economy. And that's what she's been talking about. So Democrats have been talking about. And as you look at something, and I know we're going to talk about it later, like health care, you can talk simply about the cost of pharmaceuticals for people, which are astronomical and really, really makes it hard for people.
When she, of course, has a bill on that, and she talked about that, she thinks that's terribly important. But Jen, let's talk about it. Let's not do it later. Let's do it right now. Let's talk about health care a little bit. Because I did ask her about Medicare for All, and that was a winning proposition for the Democrats. And this is what she said in part.
I'm not a big fan of Medicare for All. I mean, I welcome the debate. I think that we should have health care for all. I think that the Affordable Care Benefit is better than the Medicare benefit.
So I was interested, Jen, watching her and listening to her on that, whether she was speaking as a leader of the Democratic Party and talking to Elizabeth Warren about presidency, or she was speaking as Speaker of the House saying, wait a second, I've got a lot of House races, and I'm not sure they're going to do that well under Medicare for All.
That's right. And what Nancy Pelosi knows, and she is a very shrewd politician. I came up with California with her as a congresswoman out there. Boy, she is a tough one to beat. And she knows exactly where each of her congressional seats lie. And Medicare for All and socialized medicine does not play well. And what's telling here is that Nancy Pelosi might be too moderate for the modern day Democratic Party. You look at the folks running for president, there's definitely a divide between the people running for president and the people actually governing and doing the people's business.
Jeannie, give us an insight into the Democrats running. Is this because people like Elizabeth Warren really think this is good policy for the country, or do they think this is a bright and shiny object that will get me the nomination? If I just come up and say, we're going to have health care for more, that doesn't sound so bold.
Well, Bernie Sanders has famously been saying this for a long, long time. So when you talk about Bernie Sanders, I don't think anybody could say this is just purely an electoral, way to attract liberals. I do think that Elizabeth Warren is committed to the idea. I happen to agree with Nancy Pelosi. It is neither a winning strategy, and let's not forget, Nancy Pelosi shepherded through the Affordable Care Act. She knows firsthand how difficult these changes are. And when she says people like their private health insurance, she's right. You aren't able to do a grand $52 trillion package in one fell swoop. And luckily, it's just not going to happen. And so she knows that.
And luckily, unlike the Affordable Care Act, which Nancy Pelosi said they had to pass before we could read it, now we're in a presidential cycle where millions of Americans are actually getting to read the plan before they elect somebody, which is why it's not faring too well.
We're talking with a political panel of Jeannie Zaino and Jen Kearns. So I want to come back to impeachment for a moment, because Nancy Pelosi, the Speaker, with me at least, said politics is one thing, impeachment is another. The twain will not meet. They're separate things. But when it comes to
so
impeachment,
she wishes.
But one of the things that we're seeing right now in the polling actually is there is something of a rise in the percentage of people, a little below 50%, but like 49% now, who say not only do I think he should be impeached, but I think he should be removed from office. That is a potential shift, Jeannie.
That is a potential shift. We've seen the increase, and we're seeing it from a wide variety of polls. We even saw it from the Fox News poll. You can see it, but, I think a really telling point on this are going to be the 3 upcoming Southern gubernatorial races that the president is active in. Because if those go his way, it is a sign that at least conservative states are not moving with the Democrats on this. But if the Democrats can hold one or more of those out, that is a very good sign for them that this is having an impact.
That's a really important point. Are you worried about that 49% number, Jen?
I was pretty shocked by it, I have to be honest. 49% support impeachment, 46% and 41% respectively on those 2 polls support impeachment and removal. And this is what I said from the beginning, that the White House should be taking this very seriously. There were a lot of people sort of dancing in the end zone the first week out, saying this is going to be great for the president. It's going to make him a sympathetic character. He's going to be able to fundraise off of it. And that is true. But I always cautioned this could also lead to his removal. So that removal number is something I'm concerned about. Here's the bright spot. The RNC did some internal polling last week. They said Democrats support for impeachment is down 10 points. You also have to look at the state-by-state numbers, David. In the top 10 congressional districts that are up for grabs in 2020, the support for impeachment is about 10 points lower than that number nationally, so it's in the low 30s.
Jeannie, and as long as President Trump gets 85, 90% approval within Republicans, can he be removed?
He won't be removed from the Senate, but let's be clear, an impeachment of any president is not a positive for the president. I don't care how Republicans want to spend fundraising numbers, polls, or anything else. That is not something you want to be battling. By the way, if nothing else, it takes his eye off policy that has to be addressed in this term.
Exactly right. Okay, thanks so much to our great panel of Jeannie Zaino of Iona College and Jen Kearns, former spokeswoman of the California Republican Party. And this is Balance of Power on Bloomberg Television and on radio.
Even hard.
It's another Monday afternoon, yet another cold day. So ditch the British winter and chase the sun across the globe with British Airways from London Gatwick and witness luscious scenery and calming waves. Fly from London Gatwick to St. Lucia with British Airways, with flights and 7 nights hotel from just £739 per person. Don't miss out. Book by November the 12th at ba.com/wintersun. With British Airways, incredible is within reach. Booking fees and conditions may apply. Limited availability. Selected flights in March.
The nights have started to draw in, and at DFS we know that can only mean one thing. Everyone's spending more time at home getting nice and cozy. You can't beat it. That's why our autumn-winter collection sofas are handmade to order for complete comfort, and many are guaranteed to be delivered in time for Christmas. So make sure you come home to a sofa that's perfect for you. DFS.
This is Balance of Power on Bloomberg Television and on radio. I'm David Weston. Nancy Pelosi proudly took the gavel as the first woman Speaker of the House back in 2007. I asked her about the role of women in government leadership and what role diversity can play in making political as well as business decisions.
Well, I think that there's plenty of opportunity for not only a woman, but diversity in all aspects of our government. But I am excited to be the Speaker of the House in the Congress that will observe the 100th anniversary of women having the right to vote. And in the House, we have, for the first time, over 100 women members of the House. I'm proud to say 91 of them are Democrats, because we made a decision to increase the number every election. When I first went, it were 11 Republicans and 12 Democrats. We went from 12 to 91. They went from 11 to 15 because they just have to make that decision, and hopefully they will, as we want more women on all sides of the aisle.
And you've been undeniably successful at that. At the same time, some of the challenges that I think we see in the House, we see in corporate America as well, where we bring women in at entry levels, but it's harder to get them up to the so-called C-suite. What experience do you have that might actually help corporate America? What do you need to do? Sometimes you have to go out of the system. You have to even break the system to make sure that they get through that glass ceiling.
Well, I love to hear you saying that, because it is really important, because nothing is more wholesome, speaking from a political and government standpoint, than the increased participation of women and in the leadership of these organizations. And as far as corporate America, our military, the academic world, politics and government, nothing is more wholesome for the system than the increased leadership of women. And we truly believe that when women succeed, America succeeds. And so we want women to have the confidence that there's no secret sauce. They can do the job. So not be shy about that. And again, it will be thrilling to see many more women in the higher ranks of corporate America, on boards and all the rest, because it's not that women are better than men. It's the diversity of opinion. The beauty is in the mix of it all. And it will happen. I said the other day, pretty soon there's going to be a day that comes when people will say, how can we let more men to Congress?
That was part of my interview with House Speaker Nancy Pelosi back on Friday. Coming up here, Balance of Power continues on Bloomberg Radio. And in our second hour, we're going to talk with Tom Peters. He is the founder of YouCampaign. This is a political social media app that allows people who are right of center to get together with other people who share their points of view without going through Facebook, without going through Twitter, without paying any money. It's a fascinating thing. It's been downloaded now 500,000 times so far. This is Balance of Power on Bloomberg Television and on radio.
This is a Bloomberg Pursuits look at luxury. When Washington Nationals catcher Yan Gomez darted toward the pitcher's mound and stuffed the baseball used to record the final out of the World Series into his back pocket, he probably didn't realize he was carrying a keepsake worth $500,000, say auctioneers. In the market for some in-ear headphones? A new Pro version of Apple's AirPods costs $249 and add water resistance, improved ear tips, and noise cancellation. The $100 upcharge represents a premium segmenting of Apple's 60% hold in the in-ear wireless headphone market. Learjet, once the epitome of luxury travel for celebrities like Frank Sinatra, is gasping for breath, and Montreal's Bombardier is making a last-ditch attempt to revitalize the brand as demand shifts to larger, more comfortable, longer-range aircraft. Shipments of the Learjet 75 dropped to 12 last year from 32 in 2015. Only 4 were delivered in the first half of this year. Visit BloombergPursuits.com for more. I'm Andrew O'Day, Bloomberg Radio.
Full breakfast, cup of coffee, whatever you have in the morning, have it at daybreak.
What's the outlook for the pound if there is another election?
Nathan Hager.
The U.S. could still delay those tariffs?
And Karen Moscow.
It is the 5th major industry player to make some sort of zero commission offer.
Bloomberg Daybreak.
Bloomberg has more from Hong Kong.
Weekdays at 5 a.m. Eastern on Bloomberg Radio, the Bloomberg Business app, and BloombergRadio.com. Bloomberg, the world is listening.
When you went car shopping, you meant business. You aced vehicle history searches and test drives. You out-salesmaned the salesman. Now you've got your wheels. If you manage that, you can get your retirement plan on track. Visiting aceyourretirement.org can help. With 401k tips and smart saving strategies, you'll have the info you need to get more for your future. Go to aceyourretirement.org, because when it comes to speeding past financial challenges, you're an ace. Brought to you by AARP and the Ad Council.
Asset managers who seize change to launch new strategies, add distribution channels, or exploit new technology to re-engineer the investor experience are often rewarded. However, in an industry paralyzed with complexity, few act with agility or decisively. Few run their business strategically. Yet, the most competitive managers in the market know with the right partner and a flexible operating platform, you can. Go boldly toward change with SEI Investment Manager Services.
I'm Steve Meyer, president of SEI's Investment Manager Services. At SEI, we understand the emerging forces that will define success for asset managers and what firms will need to compete tomorrow. That's why we continually optimize SEI's global operating platform. If your business requires greater agility, our advanced technology, integrated best-in-class systems, and multi-asset expertise can be your catalyst for business transformation.
With SEI Investment Manager Services, you lead the charge in a competitive marketplace. Learn more at SEIC.com/seize change.
From the financial capital of the world, 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, on the Bloomberg Business app, and at TikTok on Twitter. This is Bloomberg Radio.
From Bloomberg World Headquarters, I'm Charlie Pelleton. Up Monday with the Dow, the S&P and NASDAQ all advancing. We are looking at records with the S&P up 13 at 3,080. That's a gain of 0.4%. NASDAQ up 48, higher by 0.6. And the Dow Jones Industrial Average up 108 points at 27,455, a gain of 0.4%. 10 years down 20-30 seconds, yield now 1.78%. Gold pulling back by 0.3%. 15.09 the ounce, and West Texas Intermediate crude up 1.5%, 57.04 a barrel. So stocks climbing to records led by energy and financial companies. Treasuries tumbled as trade optimism fueled demand for risk assets. The Dow claiming its first record since July. As for what's driving today's trading, Nathan Sheets is chief economist at PGIM.
It seems like that Trump is going to agree not to hike tariffs in December. Now, as he does that, I think he's making a virtue out of necessity. The U.S. economy was starting to feel some meaningful headwinds from the trade war. Now, Fed easing is helping offset that.
Under Armour shares are plunging after the company disclosed that federal officials have been probing its accounting practices for more than 2 years. Under Armour lower now by 15.3%. Among the companies scheduled to report earnings after the close of trading, ride-sharing pioneer Uber and Marriott International. It is 1:02 on Wall Street. Time now for the Market Drivers Report with a focus on American depository receipts. And here is Dave Wilson.
Thanks, Charlie. ADRs are rising more than U.S. shares. The S&P ADR index is up 0.8%, and the S&P 500 is higher by 0.4%. Germany's Siemens Healthineers has risen 8.9% in U.S. trading. The medical unit of industrial company Siemens forecasts revenue will increase at least 5% annually in the next 3 fiscal years. That's more than analysts expected in a Bloomberg survey. And Ireland's Ryanair has added 8.2%. The carrier's fiscal second quarter earnings and sales top projections. Now, the ADRs are up, even though Ryanair cut its forecast for deliveries of the Boeing 737 MAX jet before next year's peak travel season. Gold mining ADRs are lower after progress on a U.S.-China trade deal hurt demand for the precious metal. Canada's Barrick Gold has dropped 1.3%. South Africa's Anglo Gold Ashanti has fallen 2.8%, and Gold Fields has lost 2.1%. And UK gaming companies are lower after lawmakers called for a crackdown on digital betting. The recommendation followed a 6-month review of the industry. Ladbrokes Coral owner GVC Holdings is down 10.4%. And William Hill is down 12.2%, Charlie.
And we thank you very much, Dave Wilson, keeping track of those American depository receipts. Again, recapping, stocks higher, S&P trading at a record, up 12, up 0.4% at 3,079. I'm Charlie Pelleton. That is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
This is Balance of Power.
We have the strongest economy by far in the world.
We're going to grow our trade relationship.
I know what's broken. I know how to fix it.
Where the world of politics meets the world of business.
They've got the money they need to run a very competitive race.
We've got now a real crunch few days for Brexit.
We want certainty in the markets. We want certainty in our trading relationships.
The administration is trying to create a new divided world.
Balance of Power with David Weston on Bloomberg Radio.
Secretary Ross says we're on track to sign a U.S.-China Phase 1 trade deal. Today's the deadline for the U.S. to withdraw from the Paris Climate Agreement, and Elizabeth Warren continues to gain on Joe Biden in national polls. From the Bloomberg Interactive Broker Studio, welcome to the second hour of Balance of Power. Less than a year away from the 2020 election, new polls show Senator Elizabeth Warren continuing to gain on former Vice President Joe Biden. But whether you're a Democrat or a Republican, the one thing you know for sure is that social media will play an even larger role in 2020 than it did in 2018, and that's on top of a massive increase in 2018. We welcome now Tom Peters. He's founder of UCampaign, a company that builds apps for right-of-center candidates and causes. Its apps have been downloaded by more than 500,000 people so far. Tom, welcome. It's really good to have you with us.
My pleasure.
So I'm an oldster. So explain to me exactly what it is you do and why it works so effectively.
Sure. Well, I used to advise companies and help them take advantage of Facebook and Twitter when it was a really good deal for those political organizations back in 2007, 2008. But as every year has passed by, that deal has gotten less and less good. And especially after the 2016 elections, campaigns are looking for new ways to connect with voters. And that's where I started UCampaign, which basically allows these political organizations like Ted Cruz for president to build their own smartphone apps to directly engage with their supporters. And that's a huge asset to them when 90% of time spent on a smartphone is spent on an app. So it gives them direct access to their supporters, and they do and donate more.
So explain how the money flows, because we've seen the amount of money campaigns are spending on social media really skyrocket with each succeeding election. Is that because people had to pay Twitter, Facebook, social media in order to get access to certain information that you don't have to pay for?
I think the bigger dynamic is that it's becoming more and more expensive to activate someone via Facebook and Twitter advertising. And so back in the day, you could spend maybe 50 cents to get an email from someone off of Facebook. And now the market's so saturated, it costs $2, $3. Well, for not much more cost than that, you can get them to download an app where you not only grab that email or that cell phone, you grab engagement, you grab the ability for that person to do far more actions, including donate. And so the ROI becomes much more positive, much more quickly for your top supporters.
So let's talk about what that means for example, to take it at random, Facebook, because we've heard from Mark Zuckerberg recently that